Welcome to the Food Forest Virtual Training presentation, provided by the Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the Plant Clinic from the Morton Arboretum. So, what is a food forest? A food forest is a food-producing system that mimics a forest ecosystem with mainly edible species to increase fresh, healthy food and provide other ecological benefits in a sustainable way to the local area. Food forests help reduce the negative effects of food deserts, areas where healthy food options are over 20 minutes away by public transport and thus less available to many people. Now, let's take a look at some existing examples. Probably the most well-known food forest in the United States is the 7-acre Beacon Food Forest in Seattle, Washington, which opened in 2012. The idea of a food forest with open harvesting where people could come and harvest essentially as they pleased was initially met with a lot of interest but also skepticism, even gaining enough recognition to make it into the news. Now, over a decade later, organizers state that nearly all of the produce gets harvested every year, ensuring that no food goes to waste. Though food forests may seem like a novel idea, the ideas and concepts of food forest were used traditionally by First Nation peoples in their cultivation methods long before the straight-row monoculture plantings that we are familiar with today were brought to the United States. The idea of food forests were reintroduced in 1997 in Asheville, North Carolina, with the 5.2-acre Dr. George Washington Carver Edible Park, the first contemporary food forest in the United States. Last but not least, the current largest food forest in the United States is the Brown Mills Food Forest, which stands just 5 miles outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Opened in 2019, the 7.1 acres are supported by over 1,000 volunteers and partners. This community project brought together various groups, including the City of Atlanta, Trees Atlanta, and the U.S. Forest Service. Beyond those three, new food forests have been increasing quickly in the United States, with over 25 new locations in recent years. And there are projects happening in over 36 other countries worldwide. With more sites, it's also been seen that with proper care, these projects can yield significant harvests. A study from Burlington, Vermont found that by planting 50% of current open space with apples alone, they could meet 108% of the city's total fruit intake needs for the entire city's population of over 42,000 residents. Another study has also shown that the average yearly yield of a 0.2-acre food forest is about 1,570 pounds of food, which can supply enough calories for up to 10 people per 2.5 acres once the site reaches maturity. Though most public food forests are on the larger side, there really is no size limit, either large or small, to these projects, and you can start your own site with just a 2x4 foot space in your own backyard, porch, or even on a rooftop garden. Just remember to work with what works for you. The whole area does not need to be planned or planted all at once. Patchwork is progress, and if you have a small edible area here or there, eventually they add up to a network. In some cases, providing food in small pockets throughout a larger area can actually be a better system for a site, depending on your own needs and goals. Now, when starting to create a food forest, we look to nature's design. Since food forests are meant to mimic a natural forest structure, we need to look at the various layers that they are made up of, which extend from below the ground and up into the tree canopy. These layers are not clearly separated and often blend into one another. Together, though, they combine and create a gradient of different production throughout the year. So, let's start from the ground up. With a food forest design, each layer provides an opportunity for harvesting food while also contributing to the health of the ecosystem, which makes the soil itself a layer as well. For example, you might plant root crops like potatoes, yams, or carrots that create channels where moisture and nutrients can penetrate into the soil and become more accessible to other plants. Just above the soil, ground covers like wild strawberry or bunchberry can be grown. Though they may not be the sweetest of berries, they're not only edible, but they also help prevent unplanned and/or aggressive plants from taking over open spaces and outcompeting other species. The next layer up can be interplanted using leafy vegetables like lettuce, along with herbaceous perennial plants with strong scents like nodding wild onion and mountain mint to help deter animals like rabbits from eating the younger vegetables, while still attracting pollinators to help with later production. Forming above the herbaceous layer, taller shrubs like black raspberry and common elderberry provide tangy fruits, while shrubs like New Jersey tea not only provide a source for making flavorful teas, but also help fix nitrogen into the soil to make it more available to other plants and help fertilize them. Higher up, trees form the anchors of food forests. Understory trees like serviceberries, crabapples, and wild plums provide delicious fruit while helping pull up water and nutrients from deeper within the soil. Understory trees will be under 40 feet tall at maturity, and depending on the size of your food forest, they may actually serve as the canopy layer if there isn't enough space for establishing larger trees. At the uppermost layer, canopy trees such as black walnuts, Kentucky coffee trees, and black cherries can provide dappled light for shade-preferring plants below. These large trees provide smaller plants with protection during strong storms and during other extreme weather conditions. Depending on the size of the site, you might not have room to include such trees, since they can grow larger than 40 feet tall when fully mature. Though many of the previous plants stay in relatively easy to identify sections, some others like to cross between layers, such as vining plants. In a food forest design, fruiting vines like grapes, common hops, or cucumbers can be positioned at the edges, like in a natural forest, to climb up trees or built structures, like a trellis, fence, or wall. Just be sure that whichever support they use, it will be strong enough to bear their weight when fully sized and bearing fruit, since that will be at their heaviest weight, and too small of trees can be damaged by their weight. Now, a cause for caution. Mimicking a natural forest can result in unexpected creatures and plants joining in your food forest. While this indicates a healthy, developing, complex ecosystem, please be aware of toxic plant species and how to handle them. Be sure of what species you are interacting with, especially mushrooms and lichen, due to how similar toxic and edible species can seem. If you are in any doubt, please contact an expert or the plant clinic at the Morton Arboretum. Moving on to mushrooms, different species live in different layers, helping decompose dead material and cycling nutrients. Some of the edible species of mushroom include morels, hen of the woods, or oyster mushrooms. Again, please be cautious and be sure of what species you are working with. Many edible species in mushrooms are very similar to toxic species. If you have any doubt, please contact an expert. Lichens are another layer crossing group, and they also help cycle nutrients and provide food for many animal species. Some examples of edible lichen are black moss, tree lungwort, or redbeard lichen. Again, please be cautious and sure of species identification, or contact an expert if you have any doubt. As you've seen, there is a very large variety of different plants and trees that can be used to build a food forest. And just like that, there are also many different models to follow for designing one. You can have a huge variety even in small spaces. Finding the right design for your food forest will depend on the characteristics of your site, the food and ecosystem goals you have, and your available resources. When planning a food forest, there are several important factors to consider to help the plants work well together. When deciding on a site to have a food forest, you may have many choices, such as public or private areas, schools, libraries, houses of worship, or other organizations, or parks or gardens. But keep in mind what restrictions might already be in place. This includes recent construction or possible contaminants in the soil, which requires a soil test, or any municipal laws about what can and cannot be planted in certain places, and any municipal maintenance requirements as well. Next, check your site and see what conditions it has to help you determine which plants will do best in which spots. Start with the amount of light, water, and space in the area. Especially for trees, think about the space overhead for their canopy as well as underground for their roots. You don't want them too close to utilities either above or below because they can be damaged during utility maintenance. The amount of space will also make things easier or more difficult to harvest. Afterwards, what roles do you want these plants to fill in the different spots? Will they produce food or be a companion? Will they provide shade, structure, or be symbiotic? Also, would you prefer a native species or an other non-invasive plant? One way to find plant species that work for your site conditions and climate is to use online resources like the Morton Arboretum's interactive search on the Arboretum's website. Under the filters option, you can enter the features you're looking for, and the search will provide recommendations on different species with detailed profiles and photos of those trees and plants. When thinking on the site, also consider individuals and organizations that may be interested in supporting a food forest in your community, such as volunteer groups, local organizations, schools, etc. Some certifications that could also help gain your project support are the Pollinator Pocket or Demeter Certified Biodynamic Certification, among many others. Also consider the time, labor, and resources that will be needed for starting the food forest, as well as the long-term maintenance of it. Natural forests flourish because of species diversity. After picking out what you would like to use for harvesting, consider what other ecosystem roles need to be filled, such as creating shade, attracting pollinators, repelling pests, adding nutrients, etc. In nature, a greater diversity guarantees that all roles are filled by at least one species. Food forests mimic this through guild and companion planting. Fruit tree guilds start with one anchor tree surrounded by several other plants with compatible roots and additional roles. For companion planting, the Native American tribes created the Three Sisters model of corns, beans, and squash. The beans use the corn stalks for support to grow, the squash leaves reduce competition from other plants, and the beans fix nitrogen into the soil which fertilizes the corn and squash. Other nitrogen fixers include the legume family, such as redbud trees and white clovers, while other plants have deep taproots, such as dandelions, and actively accumulate nutrients like calcium, iron, phosphorus, and potassium for other plants to better absorb. When looking for species to plant in your food forest, it's worth considering native species of your area. Though they may not be as popular now, native species are great for food forests, not just as companion plants, but as food producers themselves, with their localized traits making them more likely to do better in your site. Here in Illinois, we have over 26 edible native species, including sunflowers, native ginger, and pawpaw trees. In some cases, such as with the pawpaw fruit, the only way that you can enjoy this custard-like delicacy is if you grow it yourself, because the fruit does not ship and store well enough for commercial growers. Other examples of delicious native species include wild onions, also called ramps, pecans, and raspberries. While it is more common to grow raspberries for their fruit, the leaves can actually also be harvested to make a nice tea. Native species don't need to be just eaten as they are either. They can also be used in a plethora of both savory and sweet dishes, such as grilled sunflower heads and soup flavored with fresh ginger. Ramps can be used to add a nice fresh vegetable to spring pastas, and pawpaws can be a sweet ingredient to make a warm quick bread. And of course, desserts. Fresh raspberries are great to add into crumble bars, and everyone knows the already famous pecan pie to finish off a good meal. With all that planning out of the way, it's now time to get your food forest into the ground. Watering, planting, mulching, pruning, and harvesting are all important parts of caring for a food forest in the long term, especially during the first 3 years, due to this being the establishing period for your food forest. For more information on any of these topics, please take a look for more trainings currently available and coming in the future. Water is crucial, especially in the first 3 years of establishing your food forest. Rain barrels are a great way to collect water to reduce your water consumption, and they can be bought new, or sometimes municipalities or local forest preserves may sell upcycled rain barrels at discounted prices. It's also important to provide signage so that visitors and volunteers know what is growing where, what plants, if any, can be open harvested, which plants need to be removed, and to provide ongoing education and training so that volunteers and visitors can learn, grow with, and become invested in the food forest as well. If you encounter any issues with tree damage, pests, diseases, or harvest damage, for example blight, please contact the Morton Arboretum's Plant Clinic and look for more information on prevention and control on the Plant Clinic's web pages. There are also seasonal illness and pest trackers to help you prepare ahead of time for incoming possible problems. And also please check back to see when future trainings are available on these topics. With all that in mind, these are the core concepts for the basics of a food forest. What is a food forest? A food forest is simply a food system that mimics natural forest ecosystems. As for existing examples, originally, food forests were a Native American concept for food production. Sites can range in size from as small as a back porch to several acres large, and in the United States alone, there are over 25 different projects. Now, for nature's design, remember that diversity of species is what creates a healthy food forest. Layers start in the soil and blend all the way to the canopy. Some species live in and across multiple layers. And again, be sure of what species you have and are working with. If you have any doubt, please contact an expert or the plant clinic. Now, for planning a food forest, remember to select an appropriate location for it. Consider the short and long-term maintenance. Remember to keep in mind the right place for the right plant for the right food. Think about companion planting and guild planting to ensure that plants support each other, and consider native edible species for your food forest. Lastly, some cultivation considerations. Watering, planting, mulching, pruning, and harvesting are all important to keep a healthy food forest, especially in the first 3 years of establishment. Watering itself is especially crucial, and rain barrels can help with water consumption. Signage and education help guide volunteers and visitors alike in learning more about your food forest. Any pest or plant health concerns? Please contact the plant clinic or a local arborist. And of course, please keep an eye out for future trainings on any of these topics and more. This concludes the presentation, provided by the Plant Clinic at the Morton Arboretum. You can contact the Plant Clinic at 630-719-2424 or email them at plantclinic@mortonarb.org. This presentation was also provided by the Chicago Region Trees Initiative of the Morton Arboretum. If you would like any additional information, please visit the Chicago Region Trees Initiative website at chicagorti.org. Thank you from the Morton Arboretum. We hope this presentation provided you with helpful information on the proper care of plants and trees, and we hope that it helps you become a better champion of the trees.